The glass boardroom felt like a fishbowl. 20 pairs of eyes watching as my boss slammed his fist on the mahogany table. His face was red, veins bulging on his forehead like angry rivers. "Take the pay cut or get out," he screamed. "You're not that important, Mallory." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but my hands stayed steady. I looked around the room at my coworkers, the same people I'd worked beside for 6 years. Not one of them met my eyes. I closed my laptop with a soft click. The sound echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. Then I stood up, chair rolling back on its wheels. My boss was still talking, his mouth moving like a fish gasping for air, but I couldn't hear him anymore. Something strange happened as I walked toward the door. A smile tugged at my lips, not because I was happy, because I knew something he didn't. Something that would change everything. I was the only person in that building who knew how our entire computer system worked, and in 3 weeks it was going to need me. My name is Mallory Henson, and for 6 years, I was the ghost in the machine. While everyone else went home at 5, I stayed until midnight, fixing problems they didn't even know existed. I built every software tool they used. I designed every client portal. I maintained every server that kept their business running. I remember my first day here. The previous IT guy had quit without notice, leaving behind a mess of broken code and crashed systems. The company was hemorrhaging money, losing clients because nothing worked properly. They hired me as a temporary fix while they looked for someone more experienced. That was 6 years ago. I rebuilt everything from scratch. I wrote custom software that saved them millions. I created automated systems that made their jobs easier. I documented every process, every password, every critical update schedule. But here's the thing about being indispensable. People start taking you for granted. They think the magic just happens by itself. My boss never bothered to learn what I actually did. To him, I was just an expense on a spreadsheet. A number that seemed too high for someone he rarely saw in meetings. He had no idea I was the reason his company still existed. It started 3 months ago when they hired the new CEO. His name was Seth Watson, and he came from a big corporate firm where everything was about cutting costs and maximizing profits. On his first day, he called an all-hands meeting. I sat in the back corner as usual while he talked about streamlining operations and eliminating redundancies. After the meeting, he stopped by my desk. I was troubleshooting a server issue that was causing slowdowns across the entire network. "You're tech support, right?" he asked, not bothering to look at my screen. "I'm the systems architect," I corrected politely. "I manage all our IT infrastructure." He laughed, actually laughed, like I'd told him a joke. "Right, well, make sure you're documenting everything you do. We might be bringing in some real professionals soon." Real professionals. The word stung, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd dealt with bosses like this before. People who thought fancy titles and expensive suits made them smart. What he didn't know was that I already documented everything. Every system, every process, every critical update. But I kept those documents in my personal files. That was the moment I knew this job wouldn't last much longer. The first sign of trouble came 2 weeks later. Seth reassigned my biggest project to a junior developer named Tyler. I'd spent 8 months building a custom client management system. It was complex, efficient, and perfectly tailored to our company's needs. Tyler had been working here for 6 months and still needed help setting up his email. "Mallory, I want you to mentor Tyler on this project," Seth announced in our team meeting. "Help him understand how it works, then step back and let him lead." I nodded calmly, but inside I was furious. This wasn't just about the project. It was about respect. I'd built something amazing, and now they wanted to hand it over to someone who barely understood basic coding. But here's what Seth didn't realize. My system was like a house of cards. Every piece depended on every other piece. Take away the architect, and the whole thing would eventually collapse. I started doing exactly what he asked. I mentored Tyler. I showed him the basics. But I stopped doing the deep maintenance, the critical updates, the small fixes that kept everything running smoothly. After all, I was just supposed to mentor, not lead, right? The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: salary alignment review. I was in the office bathroom when I opened it, standing in a stall because I wanted privacy for whatever bad news was coming. Due to budget constraints and role restructuring, your annual salary will be reduced by 18%, effective immediately. 18%. No explanation. No discussion. No acknowledgement of everything I'd done for this company. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. 6 years of 60-hour weeks. 6 years of building their entire digital infrastructure from nothing. 6 years of being available at all hours when something broke. And they thought I was worth 18% less than before. I flushed the toilet, washed my hands, and walked back to my desk like nothing had happened. But something had changed inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. That night, I went home and opened my filing cabinet. Inside were hundreds of pages of handwritten notes, system diagrams, and architecture plans. Documents that existed nowhere else in the world. Documents that would be very important in about 2 weeks. I'd been keeping these files since my first day at the company. Every system I built, every process I designed, every critical procedure, I documented it all by hand in my personal notebooks. Call it paranoia or call it smart planning. In the tech world, knowledge is power, and I'd learned early on to protect my power. The files contained everything: server passwords, update schedules, licensing information, backup procedures, disaster recovery plans. Things that seemed routine to me but would be impossible for someone else to figure out. See, I didn't just write code. I wrote the language the entire system spoke. Every piece of software talked to every other piece through custom protocols I'd designed. It was elegant, efficient, and completely dependent on my knowledge. The big quarterly update was scheduled for next Friday. It happened every 3 months like clockwork, and I'd handled every single one for the past 6 years. New security patches, license renewals, system optimizations, dozens of critical tasks that kept the company running. I was the only person who knew how to do it. Seth didn't know that because he'd never bothered to ask. Looking at my files that night, I realized something. I'd been protecting this company for years. Maybe it was time to stop. The confrontation happened the next morning. Seth called me into the boardroom where half the executive team was waiting. "Mallory, we need to discuss your attitude." He began, not offering me a seat. My attitude? I'd been nothing but professional, even after the pay cut. But I could see where this was going. Some people have mentioned that you seem resistant to change, unwilling to collaborate. He was building a case, creating a paper trail for what came next. Then he did something that still makes my blood boil. He pulled out a printed copy of my salary information and slid it across the table face up, where everyone could see it. "This is what we're paying you," he said loudly. "And frankly, the return on investment isn't there anymore." The room went dead silent. A few people gasped. Public humiliation. That was his strategy. I looked down at the paper, then back up at him. "Is this supposed to shame me?" "It's supposed to wake you up," he snapped. "Take the pay cut or get out. You're not that important." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Then I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. "Okay," I said simply, and walked out. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't collect my things. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked straight to the parking garage, got in my car, and drove home. On the way, I made one stop at the office supply store, where I bought a small USB drive. That evening, I returned to the building. The security guard knew me, of course. I'd been there countless times after hours, fixing problems and running updates. "Working late again, Mallory?" he asked with a smile. "Just need to grab something I forgot," I replied. I went straight to my desk and began copying files to the USB drive. Not company files, my personal documentation, system notes, and configuration guides that I'd created over the years. Things that belonged to me. As I walked through the office one last time, past the servers I'd configured, the workstations I'd set up, the network equipment I'd installed and maintained, all of it humming along perfectly, unaware that their caretaker was leaving forever. I passed the server room and trailed my fingers along the rack containing our main database server. "See you later," I whispered. They didn't know it yet, but I was the update, and I was already gone. Monday morning, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop when my phone exploded. 15 missed calls. 23 text messages. Dozens of emails with subject lines like urgent and system error and call me now. I sipped my latte and watched the chaos unfold through my phone screen. The weekend had been rough for them, apparently. The first call was from Tyler, the junior developer who'd taken over my project. Mallory, thank God, I can't get into the client system. It's asking for some kind of authentication token, and I can't find it anywhere. The clients are freaking out because they can't access their data. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The second call was from our network administrator. Hey, all the servers are showing critical alerts. Something about expired certificates. I've never seen this before. Can you call me back? Delete. The third call was from Seth himself, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mallory, we need to talk. There seem to be some technical issues that require your expertise. Please call me immediately. I turned off my phone and ordered another latte. It was going to be a beautiful day. By Tuesday morning, the situation had escalated from technical issues to full-scale disaster. I turned my phone back on to find 47 missed calls and over 100 messages. The panic was spreading. From what I could piece together, the problem started small. A few client portals went offline. Some internal dashboards began showing error messages. The automated reporting system stopped working. Then things got worse. Their main database server, the one I'd been maintaining for 6 years, started throwing critical errors. Backup systems that were supposed to kick in automatically didn't. Because I'd never finished setting them up after Tyler took over my project. The licenses for half their software had expired over the weekend. Normally, I would have renewed them weeks in advance, but nobody else even knew they existed. The client management system I'd built, the one they'd given to Tyler, was completely locked down. It required daily maintenance procedures that existed only in my handwritten notes. I could picture the scene in the office, people running around, phones ringing, clients angry, executives shouting. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Seth was finally starting to understand what I actually did for a living. The realization hit them around Wednesday. I'd taken everything that was mine, not company property, my personal documentation, my handwritten notes, my system knowledge, all the things I'd created over 6 years to keep their business running. They'd assumed it was all stored on company servers, backed up and accessible to anyone who needed it. They were wrong. See, I'd learned early in my career to protect my intellectual property. Every system diagram, every troubleshooting guide, every critical procedure, I documented it myself, in my own notebooks, using my own time. I'd built those systems from scratch, using my own knowledge and expertise. The code belonged to the company, but the understanding of how it all worked together, that belonged to me. When I left, I took my knowledge with me. That was perfectly legal and completely devastating to them. By Thursday, I got the angry emails, legal threats, accusations of sabotage, demands that I return company property immediately. I forwarded them all to my lawyer friend Jamie, who laughed when she read them. They're claiming you stole documentation that you wrote yourself on your own time? She asked. Good luck with that. I hadn't stolen anything. I just stopped giving it away for free. Friday afternoon, Seth finally broke down and called me personally. I let it ring, watching his name flash on my screen. Then I listened to the voicemail he left. Mallory, look, I may have been hasty in our last conversation. We're having some technical difficulties, and the team could really use your expertise. Can we discuss bringing you back as a consultant? The pay would be competitive. Competitive. The same man who'd humiliated me in front of the executive team was now offering to pay me more money. I called him back, not because I wanted to help, but because I was curious how desperate he'd become. Seth, it's Mallory. Thank God. Listen, we need you back. The system is completely down. Clients are threatening to leave. We'll match your previous salary plus a signing bonus. What happened to me not being that important? I asked sweetly. Silence on the other end. Things have changed, he said finally. We understand your value now. My value hasn't changed, Seth. Your understanding of it has. I hung up on him. It felt better than I'd expected. That same day, I got a call from someone unexpected. The CEO of TechFlow Solutions, our biggest competitor. Ms. Henson? This is Brianna Rivers. I've been hearing some interesting things about your availability. Word travels fast in the tech world. People knew I'd left my job, and more importantly, they knew why. I'm familiar with the systems you've built, she continued. We've been looking for someone with your specific expertise. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities? We met that afternoon at an upscale restaurant downtown. Brianna was sharp, professional, and got straight to the point. We'll triple your previous salary, she said over appetizers. Full benefits, stock options, and your own team. We need someone who can architect scalable systems from the ground up. Triple my salary. Not the reduced amount Seth had tried to force on me. My original salary times 3. When can you start? She asked. I smiled. How about Monday? As I signed the offer letter, my old phone buzzed with another call from Seth. I sent it straight to voicemail. Some bridges are meant to be burned. Monday morning brought a flood of desperate messages from my old company. Mallory, please, we need to work something out. The board is asking questions I can't answer. The client database is completely inaccessible. We're losing contracts every hour. I'm authorized to offer you whatever you want. Name your price. I was sitting in my new office, a spacious corner room with windows overlooking the city, when the most pathetic message arrived. It was a voicemail from Seth, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. Mallory, I made a mistake. A big mistake. The whole company is falling apart without you. Please, just call me back. We can work this out. I'll admit I was wrong publicly if you want. Just please help us. I deleted it without finishing the message. Through my new office window, I could see my old building across town. I wondered what it looked like inside. People panicking, systems failing, a CEO who was finally learning what indispensable actually meant. My new boss, Brianna, knocked on my door. How are you settling in? Great, I said, meaning it. I'm ready to start building something new. Good. Because I have a proposition for you. Brianna's proposition was elegant in its simplicity. We've been losing contracts to your old company for years, she explained. They've had superior systems, better automation, more reliable service. But if those systems are failing... She didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood perfectly. We're not going to poach their clients, she clarified. We're going to earn them. By building something better than what they have. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the work. Using everything I'd learned at my old job, I designed a completely new system from scratch. Not copying their code, creating something original, more efficient, more scalable. Meanwhile, my old company continued to spiral. I heard through industry contacts that they'd hired 3 different consulting firms, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to reverse engineer systems I'd built. None of them succeeded. The consultants would take one look at my custom architecture and shake their heads. Whoever designed this was brilliant, they'd say. But without the original architect, you're basically starting over. Starting over would take months. Their clients didn't have months to wait. By the end of my 3rd week at TechFlow, we'd signed 4 new contracts, all from companies that had left my old firm when their systems failed. The breaking point came during their quarterly board meeting. I wasn't there, obviously, but I heard about it from Tyler, who reached out to me privately. He was one of the few people at my old company who'd always treated me with respect. It was brutal, Mallory, he told me over coffee. Seth tried to explain why everything was falling apart, but the board wasn't buying it. Apparently, Seth had tried to blame the system failures on technical debt and legacy issues. He claimed the problems would have happened eventually, regardless of who was managing the systems. Then one of the board members asked a simple question. When did these problems start? The timeline was unmistakable. Every major failure had occurred after I left. Every system crash, every data loss, every client complaint, all of it traced back to the day I walked out of that boardroom. They asked him directly, Tyler continued. Did you understand what Mallory actually did for this company? Seth's answer, according to Tyler, was painful to watch. I thought she was just maintenance, keeping things running. I didn't realize she was the only thing keeping us alive. The board voted that afternoon. Seth Watson was removed as CEO, effective immediately. The mass exodus began the next week. It started with the senior developers, people who'd watched me get humiliated and said nothing. They jumped ship to competitors, citing lack of leadership and technical instability. Then the project managers left, taking their client relationships with them. The sales team followed, unwilling to promise services they couldn't deliver. Even the HR director resigned, leaving behind a scathing review on Glassdoor. Management doesn't understand technology or people. They fired their most valuable employee and are surprised the company is collapsing. Good luck to whoever comes next. I read that review from my new office, where I was leading a team of 12 talented engineers. We were building the next generation of business automation software, and every day brought new challenges and new solutions. Tyler reached out again, asking if TechFlow was hiring. We might have an opening, I told him, but you'd be starting as a junior developer, working under my supervision. That's all I want, he said, a chance to learn from someone who actually knows what they're doing. I respected his honesty. He'd been thrown into an impossible situation and done his best. That wasn't his fault. 6 months after I left, my old company officially filed for bankruptcy. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. I was in a planning meeting with my team when Brianna knocked on the conference room door. "You might want to see this," she said, handing me her tablet. The headline read, "Tech firm collapses after losing key engineer." The article detailed the timeline of failures, the client exodus, the leadership changes, and ultimately, the decision to liquidate assets. There was even a quote from one of the board members: "We failed to recognize and retain critical talent. This is a cautionary tale about understanding your own business." My team looked at me with a mixture of awe and concern. "That's your old company?" asked Sarah, one of our new hires. I nodded. "It is." "Damn," said Marcus, our lead developer. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." I laughed, but I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction? Yes. Vindication? Absolutely. But also sadness for all the good people who'd lost their jobs because of one man's arrogance. "Let's get back to work," I said. "We have systems to build." The final irony came a month later. TechFlow acquired the assets of my old company at a bankruptcy auction. Not for the failing systems or the broken code, but for the client contracts and office space. Brianna asked me to oversee the integration, which meant returning to my old building for the first time since I'd walked out. It was eerily quiet. Most of the desks were empty, covered with dust and abandoned coffee cups. The server room that I'd maintained so carefully was dark and silent. I found my old desk in the corner, exactly as I'd left it. Someone had taped a cardboard sign to my monitor: "Mallory's desk, do not touch." In my drawer, I found a note from one of the junior developers: "Thank you for everything. You deserved better." I sat in my old chair for a few minutes, looking around at the remnants of 6 years of my life. Then I got to work. We spent the next week carefully shutting down the old systems and migrating the remaining data to our new infrastructure. It was like performing surgery on a patient who was already gone. But from those ashes, we built something better. Something stable, something that would last. A year later, I was promoted to Chief Technology Officer at TechFlow. My team had grown to 30 people. We developed 3 groundbreaking software platforms. Our client retention rate was 98%, and we were profitable every quarter. The industry had taken notice. I was invited to speak at conferences, quoted in tech magazines, and recognized as one of the rising leaders in business automation. But the moment that meant the most came during a team meeting. One of our junior developers, fresh out of college, raised her hand nervously. "Mallory, I'm working on the documentation for the new client portal. Should I keep it simple or include all the technical details?" I smiled, remembering my own boxes of handwritten notes, the knowledge I'd hoarded out of necessity and self-protection. "Include everything," I said. "Document every process, every decision, every edge case. Make it so detailed that someone else could take over the project tomorrow if they needed to." She looked surprised. "Really? All of it?" "All of it. That's rule number 1 around here. We share knowledge. We don't hoard it. Everyone should understand how everything works." After the meeting, Brianna pulled me aside. "You know what I love about your leadership style?" She said. "You're building systems that can survive without you." 2 years after leaving my old job, I got an unexpected email. It was from Seth Watson. The subject line read simply, "An apology." I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mallory," it began. "I know I have no right to contact you, and I understand if you don't respond. But I needed to tell you that I was wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. I spent months trying to understand what went wrong at the company. I hired consultants, read books about management, even took courses on technical leadership. The answer was always the same. I didn't understand what I had. You weren't just an employee. You were the foundation everything else was built on, and I was too arrogant and too stupid to see it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, and I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. You tried to tell me in your quiet way, but I wasn't listening. I hope you're doing well. From what I hear, you're changing the industry. You deserve every bit of success you've achieved. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to learn this lesson." I read the email twice, then forwarded it to my lawyer and deleted it. Some apologies come too late to matter. 3 years later, TechFlow went public. I rang the opening bell at the stock exchange, standing next to Brianna and our senior leadership team. In my portfolio, I held shares worth more than I'd made in my entire previous career. But money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the team I'd built. 30 brilliant engineers who collaborated instead of competing, who shared knowledge instead of hoarding it, who built systems designed to last. The real victory was the culture we'd created. No one was indispensable because everyone was valued. No single person held all the critical knowledge because we documented everything and cross-trained constantly. The real victory was proving that you could be successful without sacrificing your principles or your people. During the post-IPO celebration, Tyler approached me. He'd become one of our senior developers, someone I trusted with the most complex projects. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Back at the old company, when things started falling apart, did you know it would get that bad?" I thought about it carefully. I knew it would be bad. I didn't know it would be that bad. "Do you ever regret how it ended?" I looked around the room at my team, my colleagues, the company we'd all built together. "No," I said finally. "I don't." 5 years after that humiliating day in the boardroom, I was keynoting the National Technology Leadership Conference. My talk was titled "The Hidden Infrastructure: Why Every Company Needs to Know What They Don't Know." Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of 500 executives and engineers, I told my story. Not with bitterness or anger, but as a cautionary tale about the cost of not understanding your own business. The most dangerous employee, I concluded, is not the one who causes problems. It's the one who prevents problems so effectively that you forget problems exist. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, dozens of people approached me with their own stories of being undervalued, overlooked, or dismissed. But the conversation that stuck with me was with a young woman, maybe 25, who reminded me of myself at that age. "I'm the only person at my company who knows how our database works," she told me nervously. "My boss keeps talking about streamlining IT costs. I'm scared I'm going to end up like you did." "No," I said firmly. "You're not going to end up like I did. You're going to end up like I am now, but only if you start protecting yourself today." I gave her my card. Document everything, build your network, know your worth, and never let anyone make you feel invisible. Today I sit in my corner office as CTO of one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. On my desk is a framed quote, "The best revenge is massive success." But I've learned that's not quite right. The best revenge isn't success. It's building something so much better than what you left behind that you forget why you were angry in the first place. I have a team of brilliant engineers who trust each other and trust me. We build systems that are documented, maintainable, and designed to outlast any single person. We share knowledge freely because we know that collective intelligence is stronger than individual genius. My phone still gets calls from recruiters, venture capitalists, and conference organizers. Last week, Harvard Business School asked me to teach a guest lecture on technical leadership. I keep a photo on my bookshelf from our IPO day, the whole team celebrating together, smiling and laughing and proud of what we'd accomplished. But I also keep one other thing, a copy of that email Seth sent me, the one where he offered to pay me competitively to fix his mess. I keep it as a reminder of something important. Your value doesn't change just because someone else finally recognizes it. Last month, I got a call that surprised me. It was from a reporter working on a story about workplace leadership and employee retention. She'd heard about what happened at my old company and wanted to interview me. "What would you say," she asked, "to other managers who might be in Seth's situation? How can they avoid making the same mistakes?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Listen to your people," I said finally. "Not just the loud ones, not just the ones who look like you or think like you. Listen to the quiet ones who do their work well and don't ask for credit. And if you're an employee in that situation, know your worth. Protect your knowledge, build your skills, and never, ever let someone convince you that you're not important." After the interview, I walked through our office, watching my team work on the next generation of business software. There was Tyler, now a senior architect, mentoring 2 junior developers. There was Sarah, leading a client presentation with confidence and expertise. At the center of it all was the culture we'd built together. One where everyone's contributions mattered, where knowledge was shared, where people were valued for what they brought to the table. I thought about that moment in the boardroom 5 years ago when Seth screamed at me to take the pay cut or get out. He thought he was firing me, but really, he was setting me free. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen to you is someone showing you exactly how little they value you. Because then you know it's time to find people who see what you're really worth. And once you do, there's no limit to what you can build together.